In the bustling lakeside town of Namakula, where bodas hummed through dusty streets and fishermen cast their nets before sunrise, lived a man named Kato Lumu. He was known across the region for one strange habit. Every year, he took a new wife. People whispered about him in markets, in bars, and along the long queues of the bus station. Yet nobody truly understood his reason. Kato was not a cruel man. In fact, he was gentle, generous, and soft-spoken. He built water tanks for the community, sponsored children to school, and never refused a neighbor in need. But still, every December, after the final rains, people watched him stand beside a different woman under the acacia tree behind St. Miriam's Church, exchanging quiet vows, then celebrating with drums and dancing late into the night. Many believed he was simply restless. Others claimed a curse followed him. Yet the truth lay deeper, rooted in a childhood promise almost nobody remembered. When Kato was 12, his grandmother, a respected herbalist, had fallen gravely ill. As she lay on a mat woven with cowrie shells, she held his hand and whispered, "My child, you must marry the one whose heart echoes your own. Only then will your house stand. If you choose wrongly, the union will crumble like dry cassava." Kato, frightened and confused, nodded and never spoke of it again. But the word stayed with him, haunting him long after his grandmother passed. Years later, when he married his first wife, Amina, he hoped she was the one. She was warm, intelligent, and kind. But 2 months after their wedding, she woke one dawn weeping. She confessed she did not feel at peace, as though she had stepped into a future that did not belong to her. They separated gently, still friends. The next year came Naledi, a bright school teacher from Botswana working in Namakula. Their love began like a candle lit in the dark, but soon small arguments grew into storms. One night she packed her suitcase, saying she felt pushed toward a path she did not choose. She left before sunrise. And so the pattern continued, one bride each year. Each relationship began with promise, joy, and community celebration, but dissolved quietly months later. None left out of hatred. Each simply felt in their soul that they were not the one meant for him. Kato felt the weight of these failing unions, heavier each year. He never blamed the women. Instead, he blamed himself, believing he had not yet found the heart that echoed his own, as his grandmother had warned. Still, some villagers mocked him. They said his love was fickle, that he was chasing illusions. Others said he feared loneliness more than truth. But Kato ignored them and kept searching, guided by a hope he could not fully explain. Then, in the 12th year of his unusual journey, something unexpected happened. One warm August afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the lake in shimmering gold, Kato visited the new community library. There, sorting books in the history section, stood a woman he had never seen before. Her name was Nyasha, a Zimbabwean anthropologist newly arrived for a research project. Their eyes met briefly, and in that moment, Kato felt something he had never felt in all his previous marriages, a sudden quiet inside him, like wind settling before rain. Nyasha smiled politely, unaware of the storm that had begun in his heart. He tried to greet her, but his words stumbled. She laughed softly, not mocking him, but easing the tension. And in that brief exchange, Kato sensed something he dared not name. When he left the library that evening, he felt strangely light and deeply afraid. Could this be the echo his grandmother had spoken of? Or was he simply desperate after so many failed unions? As the sun set behind the hills, Kato knew only one thing. His life was about to change, for better or for worse. For the first time in many years, Kato did not rush toward love. He did not propose after a few months, nor host another December wedding. Instead, he allowed silence and time to guide him. He visited the library often, borrowing books he barely read just to see Nyasha sorting shelves or typing notes on her laptop. She always greeted him with a warm smile, and slowly, friendship bloomed. Nyasha was different. Where the others had grown uneasy or distant, she was steady and observant. She asked questions not to pry, but to understand. One evening, as they walked along the lake shore, she paused and studied him for a long moment. "People talk about you," she said gently, "but the stories don't match the man I've come to know." Kato inhaled deeply, the wind cool against his face. He had hidden the truth for so long that the words sat like stones in his chest. But Nyasha's voice softened the weight. He told her everything: the grandmother's prophecy, the marriages that ended without anger, the fear that he would never find his true match. Nyasha listened without judgment. When he finished, she didn't laugh, nor did she shrink away. Instead, she took a slow breath and said, "Maybe you have carried your grandmother's warning as a burden instead of a guide. Perhaps the one who echoes your heart does not appear because you are chasing time, not connection." Her words stayed with him long after they parted. Weeks turned into months, and their bond deepened. Kato noticed that when he spoke, Nyasha listened with her whole being. When she laughed, something in him settled, as if the world briefly aligned. She challenged him, questioned him, and pushed him to think beyond tradition and fear. And each time he returned home after seeing her, he felt that rare, quiet peace he had first sensed in the library. But doubts still clung to him. What if this was another illusion? What if the prophecy had become a prison he built for himself? As December approached, the month of his yearly marriages, the entire town watched him closely. Vendors whispered predictions, old friends joked nervously, even children asked whether a new bride would appear. But Kato remained silent. For the first time, he had no plans. On the morning of December 22nd, Nyasha knocked on his door. She carried no book, no research notes, only a firm, calm look in her eyes. "Kato, you can't keep living under a shadow. You must choose, not because of prophecy, not because of fear, but because of what you feel." He hesitated, heart pounding. Nyasha stepped closer. "Tell me honestly, when you look at me, do you feel peace or obligation?" The question struck deep. For a long moment, Kato said nothing. Then slowly he reached for her hand. Kato whispered, "When I look at you, I feel home." Her shoulders relaxed, and she let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. But before joy could settle, Nyasha made one thing clear. "If we do this, it will not be because you think I'm a prophecy fulfilled. It will be because you choose me with your whole heart." Kato nodded. For the first time in 12 years, he felt certain. Their wedding was simple, not like the loud celebrations of his past. They married beneath the same acacia tree behind St. Miriam's Church, but this time there were no drums, no dancers, no crowds waiting for gossip. Only close friends, the quiet breeze, and a sense of something ancient finally coming to rest. When the vows were spoken, the wind shifted gently, rustling the leaves above them. The elders later swore the air changed in that moment, as if the land itself approved. Months passed, and the marriage remained strong. There were disagreements, of course, but none of the restless anxiety that had haunted his previous unions. Nyasha moved into his home, filling it with music, books, and a warm, grounded presence. Kato found himself laughing more, worrying less, and waking each day with gratitude rather than doubt. And so it happened that the man who married every year, the man people mocked and whispered about, finally found the woman whose heart echoed his own. Not because she was perfect, not because of fate alone, but because for the first time, Kato allowed himself to love with clarity rather than fear. In the end, the prophecy had not been a curse. It had simply waited for the man to grow into the truth his grandmother had seen long ago. The right match is not found by rushing through seasons, but by listening to the quiet voice within. And in that quiet voice, he found Nyasha, and at last himself.